It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm Cecilia Sepp, your host. Welcome to Season 7. She's back. It's a threefer for my friend and guest, Samyuktha Neeraja. She's here to talk with us about the ins and outs of component relations, and we also get to talk about our shared love of this area of association management. It's Monday, August 4th, 2025. Welcome to episode 294. Hey everybody, it's Monday, August 4th. I'm back from vacation and I'm so happy to be here with you with our episode of the week for Radio Free 501c. I'm Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting. So glad you're here with us this week. Please remember, if you haven't already, follow us or subscribe on your favorite podcast service. You can find us on all of them. And I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be. And thanks again for being here, because I am so excited to welcome back Samyuktha Neeraja. And we are here to talk about the ins and outs of component relations. So Samyuktha, before we dive in, welcome back. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, Cecilia, thanks so much for having me back. It is so great to be back on your fun podcast. It's always such a treat to talk to you, just talk to you about everything, whatever topic there is. There's always so many things to talk about. A fun fact about me is in addition to my um, day job in associations, I am also a public speaker. I love sharing my story to help raise awareness about different identities and perspectives, and I use that storytelling experience to help organizations build places where everyone can thrive and belong. So I'm glad to be here and talk about component relations.
Oh, this is great because you have been on the podcast a couple of times. So I want to encourage the audience, go back to our library and find those episodes, because they were excellent conversations about things like diversity and inclusion and equity and how we treat each other. So I encourage you, check those out. Samyuktha is a great guest, and like she's always have a fun conversation and a lot going on when we talk. So let's get over to the topic though, Samyuktha. So the ins and outs of component relations. What do you think is the first thing people should know about component relations, especially since so many associations don't really have chapters or affiliates?
Yes, for sure. So this is actually the area of the associations that I specifically work in. So I have a background in component relations for over 9.5 years. And one thing that association professionals should know is that component relations shows up in so many ways, like in associations. And because associations are so many different sizes, different members, different professions, they may or may not have something called component relations. And if they do have component relations, it shows up differently for the associations. So component relations could be something like chapter relations or volunteer relations or state association relations or affiliate relations. So these are basically, in a nutshell, the umbrella of working with the different chapters of the overarching association. So depending on the association size, they may have different chapters in their states, or sometimes if they're not chapters, they could be called state associations. So it's like little associations for the overall big association. And if they are not big enough to maybe have chapters or have the capacity to support chapters or state associations or affiliates, whatever you call them, they may have one department could look like volunteer relations, member engaged, like working with the volunteers of these members serve as volunteers so that they can either support the members in their state or in their area. So it shows up different ways, but that is basically component relations.
Well, I love that because I think you covered a lot of the different variations in the systems that we set up. But really, the heart of it is this, just because a lot of the people in the audience may not know this. I also was a component relations director for about 15 years of my early career, and I loved it because it's really where people get a lot of value from their membership on a more regular basis, because they're getting to interact with each other locally, where they live, where they work. And it's a great way for the National Association to communicate with people, leverage resources, reach out, share energy, and just get people focused on fulfilling the mission of the organization. And working with local groups, whatever you call them, is a great way to find out what the members are talking about and what they're interested in. So, Samyuktha, what do you think is the most valuable thing about having a component relations program?
That it's the members, it's the volunteers, because I feel like in this program, you're providing that direct service because you're directly interacting with the members and you're seeing their passion, their commitment to the profession of these of what they serve. And it sometimes just like it baffles me when you forget that they have, a day job, like they're, serving their profession. So I've worked in healthcare associations. So I've actually also provided like direct management services to state medical societies, and they're called affiliates. And each affiliate has a volunteer board of directors in their state, and they're the ones setting the strategic, goals for their state so they could support their members, so they could do better in their profession to support their patients, right? So it's like a trickle down effect. So it feels it's just very rewarding because the members, these volunteers, are very appreciative of the work that they do, and you see those changes happening. You see those implementations taking place, and it's like another side of these members, because not only are they very smart clinically because that's their profession, whether they're doctors or nurses, you see them taking on leadership skills like governance, leadership development, understanding Robert's rules and how to run a board meeting and how to understand a budget, how to run an association. So it's really just working with the members and volunteers directly is definitely the best part of component relations.
I agree. That's what I always loved about it. I always said that's where the rubber hits the road is with our local chapters. I've worked in a variety of systems, as you probably have. So I've worked with
Mhm.
chapters, I've worked with affiliates, I've worked with special interest groups, which also fall under component relations,
Yeah.
committees, and I think we've all worked with those kind of groups. And I want to touch on something you mentioned, which is how much work our volunteers do for us in these systems. And they really dedicate a lot of extra time that, especially in the healthcare area where I've also worked, they don't have a lot of extra hours. So what are some of the things you would recommend to keep this volunteer work from becoming burdensome and basically a second unpaid job? Because that was something I tried to be aware of when I was working with people.
Yes. So it can definitely be a lot, especially how managing a full-time job and also managing a whole board. And that's where your association manager comes in. So a lot of these states have someone such as an association manager or an executive director to run the operations of the association. So it's so easy sometimes where I see leaders decide that they have to take everything on themselves. They have to make all the decisions. But that's why you have a board. That's why you have a board of directors. That's why you have members. That's why you have an association manager. So a lot of times I see, the board or the association being run by maybe three people. They're trying to figure it out all together. But then a lot of these administrative tasks or operational tasks, such as putting together a budget, putting together an application for financial assistance, or just preparing a program for their state annual meeting for continuing education, a lot of that stuff can be put on asked done by the association manager. They're there to help you. They're there to provide that service. And so I really think it's okay to just really delegate or really just be like, hey, this is what I'm able to do. I want to be in this position, even though I have this full-time job, but I want to serve, I want to lead, I want to, make this impact, but I also need help too. So I think it's just really um being having that humility and being like, okay, yes, I'm president or I'm whatever role you're in, but also being also able to delegate and know that the association will be in good hands. So it's really a lot about that trust, relationship building, And I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but it's I can't say that for all components. I can't say that for all chapters because it really depends on the resources too. A lot of, for example, just in my experience, there are a lot of states like medical societies that are struggling because their state doesn't have a lot of members, or they don't have a lot of resources, or they don't even have an association manager, and they don't have the funds to pay for an association manager. So that's where, the national organization comes in to do their best to help them get the resources, or just give them that guidance to help them get those resources. And um so that's where, like, that's what I wanted to add as well.
Well, I think those are all excellent points, and I agree 100%. I think the association needs to provide as much as it can so that it's not a heavy load. Because again, they're volunteers, they're not getting paid, or at least we hope they're not paying themselves on the side, which is an ethics scenario we use sometimes. But what do you think about doing work with our chapters in the 21st century? And what I mean by that is this. It used to be that it took forever to talk to people, get a letter somewhere, get a long distance call. And so we put a lot of things at the local level that mirrored the National Association. So I call it the mini me approach. It's a tiny version of the National Association, and they have all of the work that goes along with it: a board, committees, a bank account, etc. All the things that you already touched on. So do you think in the 21st century, we need to be using that model any longer?
I thought about that. I never thought about, like, what could a future model be.
Mhm.
do do states still need a board? Like, do they still, I mean, you always need a bank account. I can tell you that. In order for operations, for activities to go, you will still need a bank account. But what if there were something other than a board, like, that could still act as like a good entity or a structure to keep the association going?
Mhm.
Like, you'll still need someone
Oh, right.
to manage the operations, to make sure that the things that the activities are being done, that it's still active, right? But come to think of it, I think that's something to workshop, like, what if instead of a board there were maybe ambassadors or certain representatives, but they didn't have to have like a structure authoritative um like figure. Maybe it could just be a members meeting once a month, like a council or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time.
Yeah.
I love chapters and I loved doing component relations, but I also realized after doing it for so many years and in different situations and different systems that we're sometimes draconian in the requirements. We make them fill so many requirements like paperwork and so many activities, and you have to do this, that, and the other thing, or we're not going to give you your rebate check, which was a great carrot for actual chapters. But
Mm-hmm.
in the 21st century, I just ask myself now, why are we making people do all these things when what they really want is engagement? They want to engage and they want to participate. Why are we putting all these legal requirements on them? And why are we putting all these other jump through the hoop type requirements? And what I mean by those is you have to do an e-newsletter, you have to do 2 events every quarter, or whatever it is your requirements are. And there was a time when maybe that was a good idea and a good way to do things. But in the digital environment where people can start groups on LinkedIn, they can have their own social media posts, they can actually just go form their own group outside of everything. You know, they could have a people who love cat videos group and they never will join the cat video association. So I think making it easier to participate, making it easier to volunteer. There will always be some form of component relations, in my opinion, but I think what is it going to look like is the question.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on that because, like you said, like, member engagement is the number one. They just want more member engagement. They also want succession planning. Like, because a lot of these states the or chapters, or like I said, however it shows up for the associations, they don't have people interested to run for the board. So a lot of times during the election season, a lot of people recycle. Like the president stays president for, multiple years at a time, or past presidents come back on to serve as treasurer or a director, because it's the same handful of people that are running for the association. There's no fresh perspectives. So it's like, how do you, like you said, it all leads down to membership engagement. So
Mhm.
how do we get more members? But we need resources to keep members engaged. We need to offer something. We need to offer something of value to get these members engaged. But if you don't have members, what can you offer? So at the same time, so it's just like it's a continuous loop, when it comes to these things. But like you said, like depending on the structures of the association, sometimes these chapters, components, or state associations, they may be separately incorporated. They may have their own bylaws, they may have their own articles. They could be separately incorporated, but because they still fall under, like, they're still affiliated with the national association, right? So there's still those expectations to abide by the bylaws, abide by these codes of ethics, abide by, to still follow the example that the National Association is setting, even though that they're their own separately incorporated, organizations. They can have their own board meetings, track their own finances, do their own events, but there's still a tie. There's still a tie back to the National Association, because the National Association is providing, like, services, is providing resources, is providing, and that's where that trust and relationship building comes through. So yeah, like there's still a lot of those questions as far as, like, as we move into, new age, new time, new generation, what does the future look like?
Yeah, and especially when we're looking at the differences in the different kind of groups we might be working with. So a chapter is part of the organization. This is the quick memory thing I tell people in the CAE prep course that I lead for the CAE exam. Chapters are part of the organization, and affiliates are partners with the association, because they actually are a separate entity in their own right that has some sort of a agreement with the National Association to represent the profession together using a common logo, maybe in common branding. And then with a chapter, that is something that a national association can actually have a lot more control over, because it is part of the organization. And so when you look at those two basic ways of doing it, they're very different approaches. And I think that's where, and I have seen this, I'm sure you have too, because you've had a long career in chapter relations and component relations, where a lot of tension can get created with the chapters because they feel like they're being told, not asked, not included, given marching orders, not asked what they think about things, not being
Exactly.
part of the brainstorming. So when you have that kind of tension, do you have some advice for other associations about how can we minimize that tension and turn it toward a more positive tension?
Yeah, so I really think it's just keeping those lines of communication open and constant feedback. Constant feedback, constant, opportunities to keep those doors open. And what I've, seen in my career is that we've constantly made sure that whatever they need, whatever the state associations need, whatever the state associations want to know or get more information about, we want to be that point person. We want to make sure we help them the best we can. And if we can't, we will help them find the answer. We'll help them find the solution. So I think just really keeping them in the loop, really keeping them informed about what's changing, what's going on. And if there are things that impact the states directly, they deserve to know. They deserve to know. They deserve to be a part of the conversation, especially when states have that, when it affects them directly or indirectly. It's really good because these are our members. In the end, these are our members, whether they're volunteers or committee members or have their own separately incorporated state doing their own thing, these are still our members. These are such a robust part of our members, because without our chapters, without our component relations program, without our affiliate states, all of them who are where do we go?
Yeah. What happens? How do we
Mm.
continue to deliver value on a regular basis, not just at annual conference or in a webinar? How can we get our members together? And this way, when I was at an association for nursing home administrators, we came up with a new idea called local member hubs. And what
Oh,
they were networking groups. They were somewhat formal because they were the association's members coming together in an organized manner, like they had an event leader, for example. But we did all the work promoting the events, and we might help them find a sponsor, and we answer questions for people for them. So the member only had to focus on making the event happen and making it successful. So there weren't any forms really other than, hey, here's all the information, but there was no overbearing process to make things happen. And it was something we were testing, right before I left that organization. And I think it would have worked because it's very similar to a special interest group, but instead of it being around a topic, it's local. It's a geographic region. So I think looking at different options, especially you mentioned some chapters, they don't have enough members to actually be a chapter. So how do you help people in those states or cities where they just don't have enough members, like whatever that number is we decide? I used to say 25, other groups say 15. Whatever that number is, you may only have 7. So what do you tell those 7 people? No, we're not going to help you. No, let's find a way to help you get together. So
yeah.
there's some other thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly. I just like we don't want them to be left out in the dust. We want to make sure that they're doing what we can, and as, a staff person too, it's hard to help everyone too. It's hard to, because there's so many, say associations or chapters that you're supporting, and you want to make sure that everyone has what they need. That's why you're constantly finding ways to improve and make sure they're sustainable. But in the end, we can give them all the tools, tips, resources, programs, products, and services, but it's still in the end up to the state or up to the component to decide, okay, how do you want to use this? How do you want to leverage these resources? And it's the boots on the ground. We'd like to say, right? Like you know your members, you know your peers, you know the area. Are you in that position? Are you willing to put in the effort to rally members, to get people engaged? It's a lot of work, no doubt about that. Especially like we said, you have a full-time job. You may have families or other like priorities, and every situation and circumstance is different. Especially, and I see components, I see places where sometimes the president is the president because there's no one else to run, and they may be drained, but like I want to be president because I don't want the association, I don't want the chapter to fold. I don't want the chapter to dissolve. And I've seen that like happen in a lot of places where they're just struggling to stay afloat because no one wants to run, or no one has the energy or the enthusiasm to keep going, but they're there just to stay active, just to make sure they file what is it, that paperwork, like with the required paperwork with the state. So it's hard. It's hard to say the least. It's just, um, even as like a national association, we're providing so much services too, with membership, finance, like it's there's so many things going on all at once. So, but I really think there's so much value in component relations because, like we're saying, it's the members. You're providing a direct service to the members who are serving as volunteers, and that's you can't ask for anything better than that.
No, that is true. Like I said, I loved doing that work. I
Mhm.
was usually a department of one. So it was very challenging making sure everybody got what they needed, representing them to the other people on the staff. Because one of the problems is, even at an association that does have chapters, is the other staff people don't always understand what they do, why they're there, and what your job is as the chapter relations contact person.
100%. I still have that. So like they don't realize like sometimes like departments get mixed in with somebody else or they think that we're with this department but we're our own independent group. Like a lot of times we get confused with the advocacy department, like the government affairs or like the where they are heavily in the advocacy like legislation side of it, so they think we're there, or they mix up the names like no, this we're state, we're affiliate relation, chapter relations, and we're totally different. We're totally separate. Like there's a lot of collaboration, of course, because of the state, because they're helping the states, but and so many times there's still that disconnect. Like, what do you actually do? I'm like, y- they may not realize that they may see it all the time. The states, like when you see the state leaders show up at conferences and like you see them active, you may see it in your jobs, but you may not realize that they're actually a department that's supporting these folks too. So it's just funny to see like when they realize like what when they don't realize that we do, but then they get, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean
Yeah.
because I worked at a physicians association many years ago, and
Yeah.
I was the director of Board of Governors and Society Relations. And the person who had the job before me really siloed the department. So she just kind of did her own thing. Well, then she went on to a new job. Then I came on board. Everybody thought I was running office space. They were like, "Aren't you running that?" And I'm like, "No, no, I work here." You work here. What do you do? And they just didn't know because nobody had told them. And so I think it took me about 2 years to kind of reintegrate the program back into the overall work of the organization. But everybody was really, like you just described, the light bulb going on over
Well,
their head. And oh, okay, I get it now. Oh, that's what that big meeting is at the conference every year.
so that is the most I've never heard a comment like that. Oh, are you running office space when you're actually having like an actual job? Do we actually like that is that is the last thing I would think of.
I know. Well, I found it very strange myself because I had worked in a couple other organizations where people may not have fully understood what I did, but they knew I worked there. They were like, oh, yeah, it's just like chapter relations. And to go work at a place where they were like, don't you just rent an office here? Aren't you I was like, no.
Well, that's the other
And
side of the spectrum.
yeah, I
It's
wouldn't tell that to the board governors committee and the board governors leadership either. They'll get annoyed.
yeah, yeah.
Well, especially since it was a huge stepping stone to get onto the National Association's board of directors. So they were all like, we're very much about let's make sure that we're doing our work and that we're being represented. And we had a very good working relationship between myself and their leadership in the board of governors. But it's very difficult when you're a staff person. And that was really more of an affiliate style situation in the end because
Yeah.
every state could have its own otolaryngology society, and they were separate groups that were represented within the board of governors, pretty much like the American Medical Association, a lot of other healthcare groups. So, and that being said, it was actually quite generous that there was a full-time staff person to work with the board of governors and bring them into the fold and give them the support they needed and help them with things like market. We had a marketing program that was developed for the local groups
That's
and for members.
nice.
Yeah. So it was called ENT Outreach. And I would go around and talk to people about it, and they could get the materials and help them market their own practices. Now, of course, that was a long time ago. Today, people tend to be employees at large health systems now, as opposed to having their own practice, or they're part of a huge practice that has
Yeah.
offices all over the country or something. So it's not quite the same as it was then. But that was a very useful, valuable service to the local members. And it's a great example of what we can do for our members locally.
That's like a really neat program, and I honestly think that associations or like even the small state associations can still benefit from something like that. Like because promoting and marketing,
Mhm.
that's huge. And
Yeah.
especially now that we're, in the technology age, social media, and the younger generations all on social media, and they could really benefit from something like that because especially if they don't have those tools and resources or don't even know where to start, like how do you market your association, how do you market your event, every like and to be able to benefit on a program like that the association offers that really, can take a load off of some of these like components, and especially um that's why within component relations, like some I've had experience in association management services, so where the association will provide direct like management support services to smaller states or smaller components that don't have the ability or capacity to do it on their own, that they can't afford like another association manager or work with an association management company. So sometimes it works. I've seen success. I've seen success, and I've seen not success on both sides. Depend because even also the association itself can be stretched too thin. The association needs more resources, right? The National Association needs resources to provide management support to a handful of smaller components, smaller states. So it's a blessing to be able if to benefit from these services for sure, but it's also hard because there's a limit to it too.
Right, right. Because there's only so much staff time and only so much money that can be shared.
Mhm.
So I know what you mean because we want to give everything we can, but we can't give everything or we'll have nothing left. So right but seriously,
Right.
we want to make sure there's enough for everybody too, because we have to make sure everybody gets what they need. So sometimes a larger chapter, like I don't know if you notice this over your long career in chapter relations, component relations, but you tend to hear a lot from New York, Texas, and California. And it's probably because they're huge population states, but they also have a regional personality, which was another thing I loved learning about chapter relations. The different parts of the country, they represent that personality of that region. And so they have a lot of energy. They're always commenting on stuff. And like I always found New York was always threatening to leave. Well, we can leave. We don't need you. And it's like, well, okay, what are you really mad about? Because that's why they would say that, right? To get your attention. So I don't know if you've noticed that over the years.
And I see it too because they have the most members. When states that have the most members will have certain personalities, they will feel they will have a say. They will want to say about things because they want to make sure all the members are happy. Because these are actually the actual like mini associations, and they're full like they could be like the National Association because they have thousands of members, on
Yeah.
their own. And it's pretty like it's yeah, it's pretty interesting. And to say the least.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one word for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Interesting.
All power to them though. If they're able to do this, that they're able to run a successful self-sufficient association and provide great services to their members, because that's what it's about.
Well, and they're very proud of themselves, which I always liked. They look at what they accomplish and they say, "Hey, Texas is a great state. We should win all the awards." And it's like, well, okay, but you still have to fill out the application. And so it's just and I loved it because getting to know the different people, but also the regional personalities really do influence how that chapter might interact with the national. So I always loved that part. But I am so glad that you're here and we are sharing our love of component relations. But we do probably need to wrap this up or we'll be here another 4 hours. So I do want to ask you, though, before we wrap up, have you seen a major change over your career? You mentioned you've been doing this 9.5 years now, working in component relations. Have you seen a major change? And if so, what was it?
Within the associations on like a component
Yeah, with
relations
component
specifics,
relations, have you seen a shift of any kind?
I'm seeing a lot of states, like components, like move to association management companies. Like a lot of, like they're being managed by like association management companies, and like, they have, account directors or account executives. However, it's definitely, sometimes I've seen the states like they hire someone else, like a contractor, but I'm seeing a shift definitely to association management companies, like providing those services to these components. So we're working a lot with association managers, executive directors of these association management companies, because they're the ones, like I mentioned before, providing the operations, providing the support and the services. So we're we work with them more sometimes versus the volunteer board of directors, because like they're in their day jobs, they're in their full-time providing, patient care, or whatever their profession is. So a lot of times these association managers will be the ones coming to us to help their board, so that they are the liaison in this sense. So like, just like we're the liaison between the component or the chapter to the national association, they are the liaison between like us, the National Association, and their volunteer board. So, and like their state. So we're definitely working in tandem and like making sure everyone has what they need to succeed.
Well, that's a great observation. And I think it can be seen as a threat by the national that they might be hiring an AMC, but it's really not, because I think that's smart on the volunteer leader side to realize we need that kind of support and go out and find it.
No, yeah, it's encouraged, because they like, we want to make sure that they have what they need to be self-sufficient, because that's what it's about. They're to be a self-sufficient, self-sustaining organization, providing the best possible services to their members.
Exactly. Yes, well said. I agree 110%. Well, Samyuktha, like I said, I wish we could go on, but we'd be here for hours because we obviously both shared this love and passion for component relations. But we are going to have to wrap up, so you can come back and we can talk again on this topic.
Sounds like a
But
plan.
you've been on before, so I like to ask my guests, what is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to talk with you about component relations?
So please, you can get in touch with me on my LinkedIn. So it's Samyu Neera, SAMYUNEERA. That's my partial name. And I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question?
What is the one thought you would like the audience to take away today?
Yeah, just take really get to know your members, really get to know your volunteers. And if your association doesn't have a component relations, well, first, if your association has a component relations program, take the time to find out what they do. Meet your staff, coworkers, and see what they do. And if not, maybe consider having one if you're able to.
No, I think that's excellent advice, and I agree. And I think that we need component relations departments that are more than one person. So I see you nodding your head, so I'm assuming you agree with that statement because it's a lot of work. So, well, Samyuktha, thank you so much for joining me again on the podcast. I look forward to having you back.
Thanks you, Cecilia. It was fun.
It always is fun talking with you. So we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode and in-depth conversation with association leaders. So don't forget to subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service. As I mentioned earlier, we are everywhere. We're very easy to find. If you'd like to find this specific podcast featuring Samyuktha, you can go to our Rogue Tulips website and go to our podcast page. Find this episode, share it with your friends, and look at our library of other episodes where we have these kind of deep conversations with association leaders. If you would like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Consulting and how we can help your organization bloom outside the box, check out our services page and then let's have a conversation. I'd love to talk with you and see if we can work together. If you'd like to see just what the heck is on Cecilia's mind this week, check out our blog page and see what the weekly article is. We publish one every week except for holidays and vacations, and as noted. So we also want to encourage you to check out our education page because we offer education on ethics 10 months a year. And we also offer CAE prep courses for those getting ready for the CAE exam. So again, check out the education page. If you'd like to have a conversation about our education program, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with you and answer any questions and let you know all the options available in the community, not just here at Road Tulips. So thanks again for joining us. And on behalf of Samyuktha and myself, we will see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together. Thanks.